The angel came to him in it and asked him to read. The prophet replied, "I do not know how to read." The angel caught me forcefully and pressed me so hard that I could not bear it anymore. He then released me and asked me to read. And I replied, "I do not know how to read." Whereupon he caught me again and pressed me a second time until I could not bear it anymore. Then he released me and asked me again to read. But again I replied, "I do not know how to read." Or, "What shall I read?" Thereupon he caught me for the third time and pressed me and then released me and said, "Read, in the name of your Lord, who has created all that exists. He has created man from a clot. Read, and your Lord is most generous, up to that which he knew not." Then Muhammad returned with the inspiration, his neck muscles twitching with terror, till he entered upon Khadijah and said, "Cover me, cover me." They covered him till his fear was over. And then he said, "Oh Khadijah, what is wrong with me?" Then he told her everything that had happened and said, "I fear that something may happen to me." Khadijah said, "Never, but have the glad tidings, for by Allah, Allah will never disgrace you as you keep good relations with your kin and kith. Speak the truth, help the poor and the destitute, serve your guests generously, and assist the deserving, calamity-afflicted ones." Khadijah then accompanied him to her cousin Waraqah bin Nawfal bin Asad bin Abdul Uzza, long name, who during the pre-Islamic period became a Christian and used to write the writing with Hebrew letters. He would write from the gospel in Hebrew as much as Allah wished him to write. He was an old man and had lost his weight. Khadijah said to Waraqah, "Listen to the story of your nephew, O my cousin." Waraqah said, "O my nephew, what have you seen?" Allah's apostle described whatever he had seen. Waraqah said, "This is the same one who keeps the secrets, Angel Gabriel, whom Allah has sent to Moses. I wish I were young and could live up to the time where your people would turn you out." Muhammad asked, "Will they drive me out?" Waraqah replied in the affirmative and said, "Anyone, man, who came with something similar to what you have brought was treated with hostility. And if I should remain alive till the day when you will be turned out, then I would support you strongly." But after a few days, Waraqah died, and the divine inspiration was also paused for a while. And the prophet became so sad, as we have heard, that he intended several times to throw himself from the tops of high mountains. And every time he went up to the top of a mountain in order to throw himself down, Gabriel would appear before him and say, "O Muhammad, you are indeed Allah's apostle in truth." Whereupon his heart will become quiet and he would calm down and would return home. And whenever the period of the coming of the inspiration used to become long, he would do as before. But when he used to reach the top of a mountain, Gabriel would appear before him and say to him what he had said before. There are a number of slight variations to this story, related by different people, describing Muhammad's visitation by a spirit, identifying himself as the angel Gabriel. These stories do not always agree with each other in perfect detail, but on the whole, a complete picture can be drawn of Muhammad's initial experience with the spirit and his reactions after. And that's what I just presented. From this encounter, Muslims believe that Allah, through the Archangel Gabriel, gave the collection of revelations to Muhammad that are now preferred as the Islamic scriptures.
Shalom, shalom, family. How's it going? I have a new mic today, so I'm gonna try this thing out. As always, we're gonna say the Lord's Prayer. So bow with me as we say the Lord's Prayer today. Our Father in heaven, honored be thy name. May thy kingdom come. May thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us each day our daily bread, and forgive us of our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us on a righteous path, and guard us from evil. In your name we pray. Amen. Shalom, shalom, family. I'm just checking to see how the sound is. See if I can. Okay, you can hear. All right. So I just want to talk about something that I've been noting for a long time. Now we had did a video, right? We had did a video on the Flawless Breeze account. Let me just go to that real fast and talk about that. The reason why is because I've been saying it for a while that it's no doubt that the virus that they have, the COVID strand, was, we all knew that that was something tampered with, right? We had ideas. A lot of people had ideas. No one had a surety. A lot of people saying conspiracy, right? But I noted something when I was studying the vaccine. So right here we did a big study on the vaccine and everything. And if you see this video, I have a link in the description, right down in the description right here. And this link will open up and it will take you to this note. I just want to talk about something on this note. I'm gonna go down a little bit and I'm gonna go to the mutation of the virus, right? What's interesting is, studying haplogroups and all that stuff. It also got me to understand a little bit on this virus, because this virus also has subclads, which is very interesting. Let me just grab a magnifying glass real fast and zoom in on this. So if you look at the virus, when it first came out, it was just, a basic virus, right? Came out December 2019. And then what happened was it started going through these different type of mutations. Now, for a while, everyone was all, when the vaccine came out, they was like, oh, everything's fine because, the vaccine, there's no problem with the vaccine. The vaccine's working and the virus was mutating inside, right? But what happened was, if you see this blue right here, this is why you got your delta strands and different strands, which you see them now talking about. You start to see they say delta now instead of just saying COVID, because this new mutation is almost like a whole nother family of virus. Not that it's another family of virus, but it's more complex. The reason why is because it's not just mutating inside; it's mutating on the outside. And what I noticed, I said, this virus, the way that is mutating and the way that is acting, someone had to engineer this virus for it to mutate and act the way that is acting. That is surpassing, even if someone was to make a vaccine, it's surpassing the speed that someone can make a treatment. And that's what is really interesting, because if you look up the name Fauci right now, you probably know about what just happened, right? What just happened was that they completely found out without a doubt that Fauci and a lot of them that was working together actually funded the virus. It is a man-made virus. Get this. They use rats, right? They use rats and they put human DNA inside the rats. And they're basically mutating this virus until it becomes a super spreader. Now get this. They're obviously, you got to understand that COVID is not new, right? I was talking about it before, that there was a previous strand. And if you have any questions, just let me know, because this is something you're probably going to hear about sooner or later. This is something that's going to just keep rising and rising. They're going to talk about this for a long time. This is a more of a bombshell than people know. To be honest with you, more of a bombshell than people know. If people didn't believe in health or science before, or people in authority over these things, they're really not going to believe them now. That's just know it's that bad of what just happened. But let me show you something. There's different strands, right? There's your Mars, there's your SARS, and then there's obviously your COVID. What basically they say is that there was the SARS. Now, what's crazy is that SARS has a higher fatality rate, but Mars has a higher fatality rate. Mars has a 40 to 50% fatality rate, but SARS has a 90%. But these are all from the COVID family. These are all the same family. What's interesting, though, about it is that supposedly they were mutating SARS. They were taking SARS, and that's what COVID came from, and that's why they call it SARS-CoV-2. That's actually very important, because when I was noting that, I said, this virus, imagine if this is a man-made virus, if they can make it to spread, what if they actually took the Mars and made that a super spreader? Mars is a 50%. That means every two people in a room, someone's gonna die. Now, just imagine that with the COVID super spread. Let me show you something, because if you haven't seen this yet, I just want you to get a little understanding on this, and I'm gonna talk a little bit more about it because it's crazy. It's really crazy.
Meanwhile, Dr. Anthony Fauci facing growing calls by Republicans to be fired after new documents suggest he may have lied about U.S. support for gain-of-function research when he had this back and forth.
The NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute.
Government scientists like yourself who favor gain-of-function research.
I don't favor gain-of-function research in China. You are saying things that are not correct.
So you see how he was defending. Now, remember, when conspiracies come out, the first thing they want to do is make every single person who comes up with a conclusion, because it looks almost obvious. It looks too obvious to be a coincidence, right? Why is it all starting in China? Why is it coming out? And how does nobody know about this? Who's funding this? Someone has to be behind this. This virus don't look normal. In fact, there was a lab in India that did a research on the virus itself, took the virus and broke it down. And they said the way that this virus is engineered is not found in nature. Like, you can't find a virus with what it has in it. You probably already seen it in basically a YouTube channel called Won, or how you spell it, WION. And then they talk about how these Indian scientists came together and they broke it down and they said, this is a man-made virus. It's without a doubt, it's a man-made virus. Come to find out that the whole time, we're going to finish this video, but the whole time this has been a man-made virus, and every single person who was crying out that there's a conspiracy going on called crazy, come to find out that they're the ones that's sane, and the ones insane are the ones lying. Let's continue with this. It's pretty crazy.
But new reporting from The Intercept is reigniting questions about COVID origins and the lab in China. Nicholas Wade is a former investigative science reporter for the New York Times. He joins us right now. Nicholas, good morning.
Good morning.
When you look at these 900 pages that The Intercept was able to get through Freedom of Information Act, it sure looks like gain of function was going on at that lab that we helped fund.
Yes, it certainly does. They were taking viruses related to the SARS family of viruses, and they were sticking into them the spike protein genes from other viruses, and they were getting them to infect humanized mice, as it's called, and showing that the new viruses they had created were more potent than the viruses they came from. That is the standing definition of gain of function.
Right. So when Fauci has been up on Capitol Hill, particularly sparring with Rand Paul, he said, yeah, we never did that. But when you listen to him, it sounds like the lawyers at the National Institutes of Health have said, okay, we're going to define it as something over here, and you will be legitimate in saying this, Dr. Fauci. And it just sounds like he's hiding behind legal weasel words to get away with something that it looks like we did.
Well, I think you're exactly right. And gain of function is a very hard thing to define, and there have been varying definitions of it over time. So I think Dr. Fauci has one in mind that, as you say, his lawyers have told him is defensible. But I wish he'd come out and explain what it was, because right now it's not terribly clear.
Sure. There are a number of Republicans, Nicholas, who...
So if you type this name down, there's multiple different, and this is just obviously just last night, like yesterday, and you're going to see multiple different news outlets touching on this. Obviously, this is going to be a major one. Like, this is major, because we're talking COVID was funded by America, and it was in China, and it's been covered up. And not just that, but we have solid evidence to close the case. That's what makes this very important. And the reason why this is important too, because this shows us just this year and the years following, we're going to see some things that were hidden come to light like no other. Now, the reason why I say this, because don't forget, Don't forget you're in a world, and you're in Babylon. You're in a world that's controlled by liars and deceivers. You got to remember that. Never forget that you're in a world full of liars and deceivers. Let's go back and remember what happened with Biden, because not a lot of people actually think about how heavy this is. Do you know that when we think about what's going to happen, the leadership that's going to rise, I've been warning others about what the prophecies are saying, that Islam is going to rise. It took a deadly wound, and it's going to rise again to a high power, even very, very high. And I just want you to understand that what Biden did, a lot of people don't know how solid it is that what he did. For example, let me just show you something.
It's still too early to say, but I can tell you who shouldn't lead this war. Joe Biden. He couldn't manage an evacuation, so war certainly seems too much. The president's approval ratings are falling faster than Kabul. His allies are questioning his decisions. What does Joe Biden do? Hold a press conference from every room at the White House. The same script, the same excuses, just different emotions. The latest was on Tuesday. This time we saw a combative Joe Biden. He had threats for ISIS Khorasan, blame for Donald Trump, but no answers for why he messed up. All responsibility lies with the Afghan army and leadership now. Turns out that was not the case. Biden and Ashraf Ghani last spoke to each other on the 23rd of July. The transcript of that phone call is now out. Listen to what Biden told Ghani. And I'm quoting again. This is Joe Biden telling Ashraf Ghani, the perception around the world and in parts of Afghanistan, I believe, is that things are not going well in terms of the fight against the Taliban, and there is a need, whether it is true or not, there is a need to project a different picture. Sounds like a smoking gun to me. Biden knew that the tide was changing. He knew that people were expecting the Taliban to win. And what did he do? Order some PR work. Project a different picture, whether true or not, he says. Joe Biden's words. He was busy managing perception. While the Taliban were running over Afghanistan. There's more from the phone call. We are also going to continue to make sure your Air Force is capable of continuing to fly and provide air support. This was Joe Biden telling a complete lie. Most U.S. contractors left Afghanistan after July 1st. They were based in the Bagram airfield. And once Bagram was handed over, they left. Imagine if your teacher disappeared a week before your exam. You would feel helpless. That's exactly what the U.S. did. 22 days after that phone call, Kabul fell. Neither men were remotely aware of how badly they were losing. And for Joe Biden, it's a personal defeat. And I mean quite literally. Let me tell you a story from 2008. Then Senator Joe Biden was touring Afghanistan with his colleagues. His helicopter was caught in a snowstorm. They had to land in some remote Afghan valley. The pilot sounded an urgent call to U.S. soldiers nearby. They set out on a Humvee to find the senators. For the next few hours, one man guided these American troops through rough weather and mountains. He was an Afghan guide who goes by the name Mohammed, the man who rescued Joe Biden. Guess where he is now? He's stuck in Afghanistan, hiding in his house with his family. Mohammed's visa is stuck in processing, but he hasn't lost hope. He says Joe Biden is the American president. He can do anything. And that really sums up the Biden presidency. High expectations, dismal results. The president is already talking about the future. As if Afghanistan is a closed chapter, he says America is preparing for the threats of 2021 and beyond.
As we close 20 years of war and strife and pain and sacrifice, it's time to look to the future, not the past. The fundamental obligation of a president, in my opinion, is to defend and protect America. Not against threats of 2001, but against the threats of 2021 and tomorrow.
But the man had abandoned, if you really look at that whole situation, he failed to address the situation in 2021. No matter how you look at that situation was crazy. And the whole thing, if you really look at it, he could have told the people to leave. This is all types of levels that when he lied, he got a lot of people killed by his lies. And not a lot of people are thinking about that. He says that his goal is to protect America, but you got to remember, these people are liars. What's their goal? It's not money. It's not the love of money, the root of all evil. It's one of those things that we got to understand that we're not simple, right? We've been in this world long enough. A lot of us, about 30, and we've been past all the experiences that this world has to throw out. When we think about all the things that just this nation, like America, what America does some things that obviously, when you take the time to actually examine what's going on, right? Even the situation with 9/11, right? I'm not even going to get into it, but if you really look carefully, especially at the Building 7, right? What happened with Building 7, how they announced Building 7 falling before it fell, and then it fell shortly after it was announced. It's certain things like that happen that people aren't oblivious to, right? You can't take away that type of knowledge. When someone sees something like that, it's nothing that they can do to take away that type of knowledge. And this is one of those things. Seeing the Fauci, what he did, Biden, what he did, it's one of those things that it assures us that we have to keep digging in truth, because we're going to have people and the reason why I'm showing you this, I'm going to show you, because if you didn't see this one video, I'm going to show you something what's really happening with Afghanistan. A lot of people think Afghanistan is weak and poor. Do you know that Taliban has billions of dollars? You know how rich the Taliban is? How rich the Taliban got off of the wars that was going on? The Taliban is not poor. In fact, Afghanistan is like a hot spot for riches, because the mining, there's so much material there, oil, and their connection. In fact, let's keep on going, because I want you to see this first, and then I'm gonna show you what's going to happen, because you got to keep watch with China and Russia and what they're doing. They're right next to the Taliban, right? You got to think about how close that is, how much connections they can have just by getting material. And in fact, if you notice, what's one of the major things, if you notice, the world wants to do? It wants to go electric, right? There's a certain material. Electric doesn't need gas, like, gas type things. There's a different material that Afghanistan has that China wants, and that connection is going to be major very soon. And what's important about this is that you got people like Biden that's taking this like a small matter, right? The reason why this is important is because a lot of them are actually starting to hate America. Like when you have for example, you ever heard that saying, your enemy is my friend, or the enemy of my enemy is my friend? Some people say that, right? But even in a sense, your enemy, who's the enemy of your friend, still your enemy. But if your enemy is too strong, right? Sometimes the enemy of your enemy can become your friend, right? If your enemy is too strong and his enemy may not be as strong as the person who is your enemy, you might end up making friends with their enemy. Now you're building a stronger team. You see what I'm saying? Let's continue with this, and I'm going to show you what I mean about this.
That was Joe Biden saying, job done. Time to move on. Well, easy for him to say that. Biden promised to hunt ISIS Khorasan terrorists to the end of the earth. But he had no words for Afghan women or his own allies stuck in Afghanistan. Apparently, that's up to the Taliban. These blunders have destabilized the whole region. A new wave of terror is rising from Afghanistan. Unfortunately, the world cannot hold Biden or his team accountable. Only America can. 90 U.S. veterans are calling for Pentagon Chief Lloyd Austin and Top General Mark Milley to resign. They argue that Austin and Milley should have advised against the withdrawal. But the blame does not stop with the military. What about the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken? He failed to evacuate coalition allies. His State Department could not speed up visas for Afghan refugees. Republicans want him to resign or face impeachment. But let's be real here. When was the last time American leaders accepted responsibility for anything? Take it the Iraq invasion, for instance. It's been 18 years. We are still waiting for those nuclear weapons, those weapons of mass destruction, as they call them. Joe Biden is no different. Neither will he admit his mistakes, nor make amends for them.
All right, so now I'm going to show you something. Now, I want you to really go through the journey with me. I want you to understand something because I'm going to explain to you what's really happening in the world today. There's so much confederacies that you really got to look at the major events, and then that's when the things that's underneath start to come out, right? For example, Afghanistan already had like connections with all types of countries, but when the Taliban got in, they hate America. Understand that. When I say they hate America, you got to understand that when you see them say, "Oh, we'll treat our citizens right and we'll do all this stuff," don't believe that they're saying whatever they want to because that's how everyone is. When they get in the camera, they know how to perform. But behind the scenes, you got to note the trades and different things like that. Now, watch what happens in this one. This one, if you've never seen this, this one's a really, really advanced one. I might not show the whole thing, but you definitely want to check this one out. It's real crazy what's really going on.
The United States completed its withdrawal from Afghanistan, ending a hasty and humiliating exit for Washington and its NATO allies. More than 123,000 people have been airlifted out of Afghanistan since the fall of Kabul. Hamid Karzai International Airport, 1 minute before midnight, Kabul time.
Of wanton military intervention in other
After the Taliban seized power in Afghanistan on August 15th, most countries closed down their diplomatic missions in Kabul and started evacuating their citizens out of Afghanistan. But there are 4 notable exceptions. Pakistan, Russia, Iran, and China decided to stay put. And now China has emerged as one of the first nations to develop diplomatic channels with the Taliban.
It's unfortunate because the NATO and American presence there was able to maintain a more balanced government, and even with the assumption that the Taliban would be involved, but this takeover of the entire country and the surrender by the U.S., which also caused a surrender by the NATO forces, or the withdrawal, I should say. Yes, so it's caused this opportunity for China and Afghanistan or the Taliban to cozy up together. Now we have this unfortunate marriage, friends with benefits, between the Chinese and the Taliban.
On the 28th of July, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met Taliban's co-founder Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar in North China's Tianjin. Before this meeting, the Taliban had declared that it sees China.
Now, let me just show you a quick search real fast. I want to show you something if I can find it. I'm going to try to find something. I just want to show you a comparison of powers. If I can find this, let me see if I can find it. In fact, I'm going to use Google. Let's use Google. Because if you look up how strong China is, it's actually very important. Let me switch this to this thing because I don't know why it's doing that. It's very important to know that China's not weak, right? When you think of China, we all should know that China has some strength to them, right? The size, the advancedness that they're getting, right? They're putting a lot of work in a lot of things that's happening and stuff. Here's a little bit on it right here. Just talks about right here. It says the Chinese military has grown rapidly, right, in terms of both size and capability in the past few decades. In terms of raw manpower, it's right of raw manpower, it's the largest military in the world, right? Now, obviously, why is it the largest military in the world? Because it's just large, right? China has way more people than America. It has way more capability of increasing than America. That's important to understand. And not just that, America is also the system in China. What's crazy about it too is that the system in China is much more different than how America's system is. America is actually doing a lot of damage to its own system because the system of that they give the influence that we are the people, right? We the people, and even the leaders supposed to be representing the people, but the leaders are representing themselves and doing things that the people can't even trust them no more. So that's going to cause, different divisions, which is very bad for a country when you got a solid mental state that's almost in a sense of wanting the America to also meet its demise. That's very important because that's what we also have to remember is that a country that's divided or a house that's divided cannot stand. It just cannot stand. It's no way. It's going to split and it's going to be weaker. And that's going to cause it to also meet its demise as well. So this is actually very important to know. It also continues on and says it also has the second largest tank fleet besides Russia. Russia obviously has some power, right? And the second largest submarine fleet behind the US. So that's important to understand, even if they're weaker, right? Even if you think about if these nations are weaker, when you think about US and its army, you got to remember confederacies, different alliances really make a difference in war. It can really bring your underdogs to head, right? Someone may say in their self that Afghanistan is just a small little country. They may have a government now, but they don't really have enough power to take down America. But if they make connections with China, and then they got connections with Russia, and they got some agreement for some idea for a future plot, it's important to understand that we are sitting in the end of the times, right? A change from what the world initially, right? We're talking about how long was America here, right? The 1700s. We obviously got a change when America started hitting a rise. Then you start seeing more of, your European nations more ruling versus the previous Ottoman nations that was ruling, more the Turkish nations that were ruling in the Middle East and a lot of the areas in Asia. What makes it more important now is that by looking at the detail of the divisions of these things and the alliances of these things, we got to take note of who really can you trust in this time. You know that the time is at hand, but we cannot trust anyone. Understand that when I say that. When it comes down to when these things come to pass, don't trust the government. Don't trust any powers. Don't trust it. The scriptures, when it said to trust in the powers and do all those things, that was when the law was obviously in control of the earth. But now the people that's in control of the earth are reaching at their highest form of how the scripture talks about many antichrists, many different deceivers in the world. And understand when I talk about these topics, right? What Biden did and what obviously what dude did with the medical thing, it's important to understand that these are signs of the times. When I say signs of the times, I'm talking large scale signs. These are major signs. These are not small. These are not small matters. Don't for a second think that this is not going to have any consequences. A lot of these things are going to have consequences within the next before this year ends. You're going to see the next year is going to be totally different than this year. Just understand that the way that it's going right now and the ideas that people have, right, the agreements that they have that they want to bring out only electric cars and different types of things, there's certain things that's needed for those things, right? There's certain things that's needed for those things. And they're not going the way of oil anymore. So certain alliances, there are going to be different types of alliances with different things. And that's important to understand because what we're facing right now is a decision to either, just continue with our day or keep digging deeper, because now is the time not to sit still. Now is the time to really dig deep in these things and take advantage of the time of information that we in, right? Talks about it in Daniel, knowledge shall increase. Knowledge is increasing, but we got to hold on to that knowledge. If you haven't seen this, I just want to show you this, that I'm not gonna play the whole thing, but this little video goes extremely deep to the alliances, the connections that's made, the people that's all connected, and it's serious because it's a game changer if the world changes in that point of view, right? China already oppresses. Russia already oppresses. And a lot of these, and obviously Afghanistan. There's no doubt about that. But these type of alliances is very bad. These are going to be very bad alliances that's going to be made very soon. So if you haven't seen this one, definitely see this one, because this one, you're going to really get a good understanding on what's going on once you see this little video. I'm going to close this real fast. So, and that's what I was noting. So obviously the leaders in power, they're going to say what they want. And this is nothing new. But the only thing is that right now, at the time that we're in, trust is one of the major things that the nation was hoping for a little bit of trust, at least in a time of a pandemic, right? We want to see at least when things kick, when things hit the fan, you're in a thought like, are they at least going to tell the truth about the situation so that we can at least have the truth of the situation? No, I'm not going to tell you the truth of the situation. So that makes it where people, the types of conspiracies that were coming out, a lot of them can't even be counted as conspiracies. They're actually rather statements that had not yet have evidence for, but a lot of them might be valid. A lot of things like that might be valid. So I just wanted to talk about that because this is an example. This is a major example. Don't let anyone tell you that you can trust this nation or any of these nations. Don't let anybody tell you that you can trust this nation or any of the nations of the world today, because we're in Babylon. Understand that. We are in Babylon, and I would love for someone to say otherwise. This is Babylon. So we have to understand that the lies that's going to build up from these things, brothers and sisters, really grab forth to the truth, because you cannot trust a lot of this information that's coming out. The only thing that you can trust is this word. That's all you can trust when it comes down to it, because what's going to happen, I couldn't point you in any direction of a leader that would be for you. Understand that. If this thing hits the fan, understand they're gonna be the first ones to throw you under the bus. They're gonna be the first ones to throw you under the bus to make sure they get their way. So I don't know if you've seen it. It's just a talk. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's talking about it. It's one of those things that is gonna keep growing to something major. So I just wanted to show you that, because obviously taking note of the COVID thing and the vaccines and all that, it's important to know the limitations and the levels of that. I'm going to put a video in the description. If you haven't seen it, when we talked about the COVID vaccine and everything, we go over the COVID vaccine. We go over what is the COVID, what exactly is the COVID. And then we go over, that time. Remember that time they was all talking about the mask and everything. Just be careful. Just be careful, because the mask, the vaccine, the virus, even the virus is not the mark of the beast. It's important to understand it, but it is a sign of the times, right? On Revelation, on the Sabbath days, we talk about that basically the virus is a sign of the times. It's a pestilence, right? The scripture talks about that. There shall be pestilence in those days. That's a pestilence. That's what that is. But it's not yet the mark. That's important, because there's so many things that's going to happen before the full initiating of the mark comes. And it's stuff that can't be ignored. It's certain details that when you look at them, you know that they have to happen first. Then comes the mark and the beast and the whole ending of the whole thing. But remember, the beast is different than Babylon. Always remember that. The beast is different than Babylon. Babylon is one thing and the beast is another, right? That's very important to understand. But yet the beast is going to come, going to sit on Babylon. Remember how it says he declared himself to be God and whatnot. So the whole thing is important to understand that these are signs of the times. That's what this is. It's really is signs of the times, and it's a buildup of information that we basically built up over time. And this is the importance of keeping watch, because if you're not paying attention, it can come down to the point where they might, for the clarity, they might try to pull that they are a righteous bunch. And when it comes down to the actual initiating of the mark of the beast, they'll be all for it. And the first people that's going to go are those that didn't prove if they were trustworthy, but they're not trustworthy. That's what makes it important. They're not trustworthy, and we have to be careful on all things. Prove all things and hold fast to that which is true. I got something. I'm working on something. So I got this little mic. So I'm working on something. I got something special for the family. So I'm going to make something, and hopefully that'll be done. And I have that there on Monday for something a little later. But today I just wanted to talk about that and have a little holy conversation on these things, because what do you think about that? When you see, people are saying it's a conspiracy, and then all of a sudden the conspiracy isn't a conspiracy, right? What do you say about that? You just do people just say, well, on to the next thing? I think that we should, really consider these things, that a lot of these people have to be held accountable, because it really does make a big effect on not just the community of science, right? On the community of believers, right? Because believers, there are also believers, I don't know how, but there are some believers that try to say, the nation, you can trust them, right? There's some that talk about they're not going to lie to you. They're going to at least do this thing or that thing. We got to be careful. We got to be very careful not to just be, we have to have charity and love, but we also have to have a very stern and cautious eye, right? We have to have a stern, and the only way we can have that cautious eye and discernment is if we exercise it, right? We got to exercise our discernment. We got to exercise it, right? Scripture talks about that, right? It talks about that we need to exercise it to have discernment on these things. So I just want to talk about that, because the types of things that we're seeing nowadays, I don't regret that we are studying these things. I really don't. I'm actually glad that, brothers and sisters are actually hungry for knowledge, for truth, instead of just, wanting to just read and then that's it, but actually read and observe the situation currently and the previous situations, right? There's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new under the sun, but we got to be careful with a lot of these things. So obviously, if anyone ever wants to have a deep conversation on these things, anytime we can have a deep conversation on these things, right? And other things, because that's what it's about when serving Yah. You just serve truth. That's what you do. You just serve truth. Whatever is truth, bring it forth, right? Bring it forth. And that's what it means to be the light, right? You're shining a light on the situation. So I just want you to understand that, so we have a good understanding on what we're doing here. So always bringing truth, always seeking truth and bringing truth. So help us God. So with that, family, if you have any questions or anything like that, let me know. Other than that, that's all we got for today. We're going to have a holy conversation on whatever comes up that's major, because just know that the time that we're in, don't think for a second we're not in the time of the end. Just keep that in mind, that we are surely, without doubtlessly, in the time of the end. But I got something coming. Hopefully it motivates some of the brethren. It's going to be a little different than what I usually do. So with that, family, be blessed, be beloved, and amen.